And the more you get out there, like the more you find these connections. I mean, if you're willing to be vulnerable and network like in these communities, like I found in the non-alc bev community specifically, I mean, there are tons of people in recovery. There's certainly plenty of entrepreneurs who are not in recovery, but have a vested interest in folks that are. There's this camaraderie in the non-alc community that just didn't exist. Like, certainly there's a lot of competitiveness, but like everyone wants to see it grow because I mean, a lot of us just want to have more of these products available for ourselves selfishly. You know what I mean? Folks out there who want to elevate experience for everyone, because what hospitality is about, and like also sharing experience with friends. Like if you're going to a Thanksgiving dinner or something along those lines, you shouldn't be an afterthought. But yeah, I mean, if you're passionate about something, put yourself out there. You're going to find your people, especially sober people.
Stories are powerful.
Welcome to the Rise, Recover, Live podcast, brought to you by The Phoenix. This is a space where people impacted by substance use can come to share their story of strength and resilience, get open and honest, and inspire hope and build community through shared experience.
We'll be talking to people in our community on their own recovery journey and shine a light on the topic of recovery in all its forms. Maybe you'll hear some of your story in theirs.
Let's show the world that together we rise, recover, and live.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of the Rise, Recover, Live podcast. We are your hosts, Bryce III, he, him pronouns.
And Liz McKean, she, her pronouns.
I'm going to need a little bit more energy from you, Liz. Do you hear my radio voice? I need you to step your radio voice up. I'm not playing.
I'm going for the Delilah After Dark version of Liz today. So that's my radio persona.
Delilah After Dark. I don't know the reference, but it sounds on par with the energy.
Maybe I'm 100 years old, but it was a thing back in the day.
You look very good for 100.
Oh, thanks. It's the eye cream. I'll link it in the, just kidding.
How is your energy today, Liz?
My energy is, I'm a little tired, to be honest. It's Monday. I'm supposed to like come in all rested up, but, it's been a busy day. How about you?
Yeah, that's because the supposed to stop shitting on yourself. You are exactly as you're supposed to be in this moment. And I can understand that you would be tired knowing specific circumstances and things that you got your hands and feet in. And anything that Liz has her hands and feet in turns out wonderful. So,
you're so sweet.
I'm just being factual. My energy today is good, especially after a couple of bites from that poke bowl. I've been kind of ripping and running today, so it was good to get a little bit of sustenance.
Nice.
Doing the same thing. My hands and feet are in a lot of things right now too. So, but I just feel like, those moments of we're confused because we've never done this thing before. We don't know how this thing is going to work. And then we sit in it for so long and we have that conversation for so long that confusion turns into competency, but we don't necessarily like realize it until like we're in the moment. Somebody asks us a question and there's no longer that anxiety, but it's kind of like, oh yeah, I know how this is supposed to go. It was like, whoa, snap. Like I'm competent now. That's crazy.
Growth.
Yes.
I tell you,
so
it's wild.
It's been one of those days where like, yeah, I'm excited to be able to contribute to things that I feel that I'm competent in. So,
I'm so glad. You're one of the most competent people I know, just in general. So I'm glad that you feel that way. You deserve to feel that way.
Lies. No, I'm playing with you.
How dare you?
I'm excited to have a conversation with today's guest. I think we've been wanting to have a conversation around NA Beverages for a while. I know NA Beverages have played a role in my recent life, especially putting together sports partnerships and creating environments where people can come have fun, alcohol free. So yeah, let's dig into it. Liz, who do we have here today?
Today I'm going to try and have him correct me afterwards if I get this wrong, but Mark LaFaro on the podcast. And he is a writer who I just read the one article that I had of his, and it was just beautiful. So I'm excited to share that with everyone. Also, for very many years, has worked in the alcoholic beverage industry, which is a big part of his journey into recovery. So I'm really excited to talk about all things that are, specific to that and the ways that touches us all. So Mark, welcome. How are you?
I am well, Liz. Thanks so much. And you nailed the pronunciation for the record.
Yes. Oh, good. I had that moment where I'm like, oh, I didn't ask him before we hit record. So, there we go. That's got to be a good sign. good things to come.
Absolutely. Spoiler alert, it's a nom de plume. So you really couldn't have gotten it wrong.
That's a good word, nom de plume. I would have mispronounced that if you had written that out. I would have nom de plume. Well, we're so happy to have you here, Mark. Thanks for hopping on and taking the time. I know you're really busy and just really excited to kind of just dig into your story. I feel like I cheated because I read some of it already, but I really would love for folks to hear how you came into recovery, considering that you come from this industry that is all about the alcohol.
Yeah, I mean, probably pretty easy to understand how you wind up in recovery after many, many years in the alcohol beverage industry. But yeah, I started out actually my professional career in hospitality. So I worked as a bartender for a very long time in New York City and wound up bar managing. And as I was looking to shift my schedule right before I was getting married to my now ex, I had so many like beer reps and wine reps and liquor reps coming into my bar. And I was like, oh, that'd be so cool to, sell beer and all this stuff on the other side of the bar because I had a passion for it. And I do think that, in those early days that passion was founded, had a foundation in the right reasons. I was fascinated by the science of making alcoholic beverages and, the possibilities in terms of pairings with food and other occasions. So it seemed like a really good fit. And, as I got into the alcoholic beverage industry, I kind of found that the culture around it was obviously very centered around drinking, but, not in a way that maybe, your, 1950s, 60s ad men were. It was but not just encouraged, it almost felt like a requirement in some ways for career advancement. So I just became so embroiled in that culture. And I think this is like one of those, frog in boiling water kind of things where, everyone around me was consuming so much. And I couldn't really see the problems developing myself, obviously, until you get that to that point. And I joke around with people. I mean, by the time I hit recovery and finally got sober for good, hopefully for good, one day at a time, right? I had probably about, 19 different, what could have been rock bottom moments. And even like when I hit my last couple of rock bottoms, like what I thought was rock bottom was actually several hundred feet above rock bottom, type things. Absolutely. Yeah. But, that's how I eventually wound up here.
That's awesome. When I was reading your article, Mark, the thing that jumped out was that from the very beginning, there were testimonials from like several people who had said that even in the interview for that career path was drinking, like 6 or 7 beers in, I think was one of the ones that I saw. And they were like, I know it was going well because we were that many beers in. And that was just like for the interview. And a lot of that was about, tolerance and things that from the very beginning, it was like you got something to prove in a space, in a way that you certainly wouldn't in most other jobs. And that makes total sense that you'd have that feeling of like the frog in the boiling water, because I think we all kind of create that. I remember creating that, like, let me surround myself with people who drink like I do. And I was actively doing that, as opposed to with you, it was almost not even on purpose. So even more so, it can sneak up on you. What did it look like to get help when you were in that scenario, when there was a whole bunch of frogs around you?
Help didn't really come until after I finally left the industry. I was actually out of work and on disability for a while after I lost my last job in the industry. And, I found out later on that I had untreated bipolar disorder. And as many people listening are probably well aware, that there's a very high comorbidity with substance use issues with bipolar. So I was using alcohol to self-medicate. And, it was becoming untenable. I managed to survive in the industry and still have a really great reputation, but it was the rest of my life that was falling apart around it. Again, the drinking was acceptable in the booze industry. I could go out and get drunk at a work function and no one would really think twice because everyone was also consuming so much. And again, the people around me weren't necessarily the best barometer for, do I have a issue with my consumption? I'm looking around. It's like, well, that person drinks twice as much as me, and that person, that person has the real problem. But as a lot of people in the program are aware, probably, I was don't take other people's inventory. It's really about how it's affecting your life. But yeah, it wasn't really until after the fact. I stayed kind of in and around the industry, and now I'm around the hospitality industry quite a bit, which in and of itself, like there's a very high rate of substance misuse. I think 20% of hospitality workers struggle with that as well. But what it really came down to, honestly, was realizing that this was a situation where things weren't going to get better without removing alcohol from my life.
Mm. Yeah. So upon that realization, what did you feel that you had to do? A lot of times you'll hear people, they come across a realization and it's like, okay, I gotta put all of the plates down and I gotta like switch my industry, especially like within industry like restaurants and music and like these industries that run off of like alcohol and the sale of we're in. And with you working within that industries specifically, like did you feel like you had to put things down to be able to approach that conversation with yourself, where it's like, okay, I got these things going on and maybe I should approach life differently?
Yeah, I mean, it certainly crossed my mind. I mean, talking about like the specific rock bottom that finally got me to, actually do the work and stop drinking. My then wife, my ex, left me. And I mean, that was it. And again, I was out of work. So I had to get back to work quickly. And the easiest thing for me to do, having had hospitality experience, was get back to bartending. It was the most lucrative, quickest job that I can get. So I really got thrown into a situation where I kind of had to normalize being around alcohol without consuming. And it was challenging. The fortunate thing was, having been in the alcohol beverage industry for a long time, is I had many ex-colleagues and friends who walked the path of sobriety before me. So, I had done a couple of like inpatient hospitalization programs around mental health where I had attended AA meetings and, found a lot of resources that were really helpful. But honestly, it was creating a network around me of people that had experience navigating, either the alcoholic beverage industry or hospitality industry while not drinking. And I didn't necessarily shy away from it. I wound up bartending at a brewery locally here in the Hudson Valley, New York. And it actually rekindled my love for the industry in a weird way. Like I found myself networking and enjoying being around, again, like the all the geeky stuff about it more than I ever have without consuming a single drop, really. So it was eye-opening for me, and certainly not a path a lot of people walk. It was pretty unconventional for sure.
Yeah. Well, often things that are unconventional just because nobody's been brave enough to be the first one to do it, and then once you do, like you said, you find out that there's all these other people who are having the experience that you're having. And, when you talk about it or write about it or just like live it out loud, you make yourself available to people who maybe wouldn't have been able to see that in themselves or certainly reach out for help otherwise. And that's huge, because I'm just picturing too, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like I feel like so often when we get sober, it's like, okay, now you need to get up really early and go to bed really early and, do what you considered fun, often like very genuinely changes, but I know plenty of people that are like, no, I'm still a night person. I still want a place to go and socialize and like fun things to do. And like, I still, like you said, love food and love pairing it, like all those things that maybe originally attracted them. So to have someone like you, like in the industry and finding ways that can work is incredible. So yeah, has that been your experience? Like, no, I'm not going to give up this lifestyle. This is still part of who I am. I can do it safely and help others.
Yeah, 100%, totally. And I mean, for anyone listening out there too, like if you're in the hospitality industry, if you're working like for a winery or a brewery or something like that, you're not alone. So I got into reporting and journalism. It was something that I studied in college, and it was part of my recovery. I wanted to write about my journey a little bit. Yeah. And, in the course of reporting on that story that you'd mentioned for Good Beer Hunting, as well as some others, I met so many people that were still in the industry and doing their thing, and for me, I love bar culture straight up. And I mean, not just for the alcohol, but for the community. Like my local local dive bar. It's a community hub. I wanted to find a way that I could keep it in my life. And again, I know that this is not going to be a part of everyone's journey. The same thing with non-alcoholic beverages. They're a little close to beer or whatever it might be. But for me, like I wanted to find a way to still have it be a part of my life, but not be the entire center of it necessarily. And one quick shout out to, just because I thought it was pretty amazing, something that I kind of found over the course of reporting. I'm sure y'all are probably familiar, but in case your listeners aren't, if you're in the hospitality industry and looking for a really great resource, to talk to other people that are in hospitality while either sober curious or getting sober. Ben's Friends is a great group. They have meetings, several cities across the country, and a ton of online meetings. A great way to find community that has the same kind of experience that you might be having.
Heck yeah.
They're a good friend of the Phoenix.
We've had officially a friend, yeah.
Yeah, in the partner spaces within the Phoenix app, you can find Ben's Friends, as well as if you want to go back and listen to the podcast episode with Mickey Bext, one of the founders of Ben's Friends. Go back and listen to that. Matter of fact, we'll put it in the description of this podcast, because I know one of the biggest things that's aided me in unfolding as a human within my recovery is having this variety of communities, all of which speak to like very specific elements of me, So like I'm in the transformative justice parenting network. I also have like a men's group where it's, men coming to talk specifically around emotional wellness. And, I have my young people in my specific recovery program community, all these different communities. And to have something as specific as like, look, this is a group that gets together, but specifically within a hospitality realm, and to talk like, how do we show up in these environments? Because there's a specific language there. There is a community unique to those environments and things that only you all would know how to support each other on. So that's a super dope resource, and I think leads into kind of what I want to learn more about you, Mark, is as the way that you approach your recovery has blossomed, and you found different communities and different processes. Like, what has that looked like for you as you pursue a relationship with the things that help you to discover who you are in the midst of your recovery journey?
That's such a great question, and something that's, I think, constantly evolving as I continue to find more resources, and as my sobriety continues. I'm 6 days away from a year and a half. I'm really proud of that. Thank you. It's changed. I mean, from the beginning, I knew early on, I mentioned, I found some inpatient programs, and AA wasn't for me, but I wasn't about to just give up on like community and toolboxes. Like, one of the best pieces of advice I got is like, what got you through your first month isn't going to be what gets you through the next 6. And what got you through the first year isn't going to be what gets you through years 2 through 5 or 5 through 10 or whatever else. So, I mean, there have been a number of resources, resources like Ben's Friends, but, I'm also finding ways to kind of build a life that I don't want to escape from anymore. And that's been the biggest key. So, that includes obviously, things with regards to physical health, right? Like the Phoenix putting on so many great events. Bryce, you mentioned NA Beverages, and it's something that I'm covering journalistically, and it's been a huge part of the path for me. Again, I was really into craft beer, and like I said, I think for the right reasons to begin with, and to be able to still have a great non-alcoholic IPA or something like that, as kind of like a reward for doing some yard work, or like the lawnmower beer or whatever it might be. It's been huge, but I'm always keeping my eyes open and ears to the ground for unique perspectives and experiences that can help my sobriety evolve to that next step and next level.
Within the non-alcoholic beverage community, I know, because I didn't, and it's new to me, because I didn't drink for the taste. Like, I drank to get drunk when I did drink. And what I've come to find within the NA beverage community is that, like, there is that conversation around the science of brewing, around the creation and the craft of it. And it's just so awesome to see people be able to participate and immerse themselves in a craft. Like, they didn't lose that. is still there. So how has that experience been for you? What do you like to what extent has being able to have that experience contributed to your personal recovery, and where do you see the future of non-alcoholic beverages going from here?
Yeah, and this could be a whole other podcast, Bryce. But I'm going to try to be as concise as I possibly can. Um, First off, like the category itself is growing rapidly, and certainly, like we're seeing a shift demographically in terms of how much people are drinking, how often they're drinking. Obviously, the sober curious movement. Speaking specifically to beer, I mean the category is the most rapidly growing subcategory of all of beer sales right now, which is incredible.
Really?
And
Wow.
yeah, and obviously off a very small base, we're still less than 1% of the total beer market. But if you look at other countries across the, across the world, Spain, almost 15% of all beer sales are non-alcoholic. Germany is very similar. In England, it's about 10%. So this is something that's pretty normalized in other cultures. And I think that, in the US, maybe people had been turned off to it because they had an O'Doul's that was probably in the back of a bar fridge for the last 10 years and it was collecting dust or whatever and tasted terrible. But there are some incredible producers out there making excellent, not just non-alcoholic beer, just excellent beer, period. Like really great stuff. Athletics certainly being one of the non-alcoholic breweries, leading the way, but it's out there in wine, and non-alcoholic liquor too. Shirley is another great company making excellent products, and there are tons of people again that have been in in recovery for a while that are pushing the envelope forward. I mentioned in that article, again, the list that you had quoted before, I got to interview a woman named Megan Anderson, who just started the first alcohol-free non-alcoholic certification program. Teaching people how to both like create these products in a great way, how to market and sell them, also for bar staffs, educating those folks. So these people are out there and they care deeply about giving people, the same kind of experience and attention that, these big alcohol companies are, putting into their regular products. So yeah, I see a really bright future there. And, in terms of how people are using it, something I think that a lot of us are always seeking is just tools in the toolbox, right? And I think it could just be another tool in the toolbox for folks.
Yeah, and I'm curious to like dig into your, even beyond the journalism, like your personal experience with the tool, because in my experience working with tons of people within the recovery community, I've come across kind of a divide. There's people that maybe have been in recovery due to a specific pathway that they've been in, and they look at this as like, I don't want to like play around. I don't. There was a specific instance that I experienced. There's a organization that, because like the nature of the story, I won't say their name, but they're an adult organization. And we've done some collaboration with them here in Detroit. And we went out, and they're very good at like putting what the beverages are on the signage. And it's like alcohol-free, sober cocktail get-togethers. And we had partnered with them for a program and took like 10 to 15, we sponsored like 10 or 15 people to come. You come, it's all you could drink, and it's like a get together. And so a woman was fresh out of rehab, maybe like three or 4 months. And this was her first Phoenix program that she came to, and she found out about this gathering through the Phoenix. So she comes, she goes to the bar to get her a drink, and she grabs a drink that is a non-alcoholic wine. And so I tasted a couple other cocktails. It was like a coffee cocktail. It was like something else. And me, like, it didn't trigger anything in me. Like, oh, this is like a cool non-alcohol. I could sip. I have something in my hand. The one that she got, she came to me and she stood next to me and she sipped it. And she was like, ooh. She like, this is wine, like I need a bottle of this to go. And then like we had a quick discussion where it's like, if this is not something that you feel comfortable like partaking in, I would say go take it back and go get you one of these drinks that are like kind of like mixed drinks or like, pops, and have a little bit of that feel to it. And she did end up going and returning the wine and then getting something else. And so there's some people that have had these experiences where it's like, I don't want to partake in like what reminds me of what drove me to desperation to begin with. And then flip side, there's people that have used non-alcoholic beverages to really improve their quality of life and show up in these environments and be able to, not even for me, like having a liquid death. Like I never cared about nothing to drink, but I've been to concerts and, my girl would get something to drink and I'm like, yeah, give me a liquid death. And I'm standing there with a liquid death. I'm looking cool, and it's a part of the experience.
Yeah.
So I'm curious as to like what your specific experience with NA beverages has been, so that you could speak to like how it has contributed to your recovery.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, like Bryce, like I think for me, for sure, as I mentioned before, like I like hanging out like at bars, at dive bars and stuff. I love like meeting those people at community hubs. And, I've been open about my sobriety, but yeah, it's really helpful to have something in your hand that looks like an alcoholic beverage that isn't, because you don't have to just disarm. It's not the first point of conversation is why are you not drinking? Certainly I want to be respectful to folks, whose journey don't include these beverages. Like if it's too triggering for you or you think it's going to be too triggering for you, don't bother. But I mean, for people that are, sober curious or trying to moderate, like I, again, just see it as a really great tool in the toolbox for those folks, as something that they can use, even if it's just in between like regular alcoholic beverages. And for folks like, yeah, I mean, producers are getting very good at making these taste like what they're supposed to be, which is sort of the point, right? But just to assuage some concerns about like the actual alcohol content and whatnot, a couple of quick distinctions. First off, like there are alcohol-free beverages and non-alcoholic. Like most beer in the U.S. that's marketed that way is non-alcoholic. The difference is very strictly defined as non-alcoholic being under 0.5%, alcohol-free being under 0.05% alcohol. So, extrapolating out with this math, if you're drinking a non-alcoholic beer at 0.5%, you'd need to drink 10 of those to equal one 5% 12-ounce serving of beer, which is what one drink is considered by, the USDA. So that's a lot of slamming non-alcoholic beers. And as someone who's done my fair share of doing that, you're going to get full before you even remotely drunk.
You're going to get sick before, just from the fullness, yeah.
That's it. I mean, people, always are like, oh, why would you spend $10 on a 6-pack of non-alcoholic beer? And I'm like, well, that'll last me 2 or 3 sessions of drinking because I'm not going to drink 12 of them like I used to. And the other thing I'd be quick to point out too is that fermentation is a pretty natural process. It happens with a lot of different items and things. There's more alcohol probably in your glass of orange juice on your Sunday morning or in a banana than there is in most non-alcoholic beverages. But, again, like your journey is your journey. If it's something that, you think that it can fit into your life, awesome. If it's something that's going to be too triggering for you, just leave it at the door. It doesn't need to be for you.
Yeah, I think that's such a cool thing about it. Just speaks so beautifully to where we are, as a recovery community to, and not every recovery community, certainly, there are communities that I think would just be like, we don't even want to have this conversation. That's completely okay. But it's the cool thing is you don't have to, and like, so personally, I'm vegan, I don't have any animal products and I love me an Impossible Burger. I love me a, pretend chicken sandwich, things like that. And I know there's people in the vegan space who will feel really strongly that like that's bad, like why would you want anything that has anything to do or even similar to meat? And it's like, well, you don't have to eat it. And for me, as long as there's no cruelty that goes along with this, then like I didn't stop eating hamburgers because I didn't like hamburgers. I stopped eating hamburgers because I didn't like hurting cows. So like I'm gonna have this Impossible Burger, and it's so great because you can sit next to me and you don't have to. And it's the same thing with these, Also, with these, sometimes you don't want to sit next to somebody that's having, and if it has that, like the smell even is triggering, and you don't have to. And that is such a cool thing that there's so much choice involved, and it takes a lot of that, know thyself energy but everything does. There was a while that like me just getting in my car shockingly was a trigger, and you gotta know, you gotta just be really honest with yourself. And until you can do that, you talk to other people who can help you figure that out. And that's what community's for.
Yeah, that's
Totally.
what's important about like these spaces and this show, to be able to listen to people who have had this experience and find out, if you're the person who's like, okay, yeah, I can participate in this, or like if the first thought that you had when you heard that, it was like, can I get drunk off bananas? Like if that was your first thought, like maybe this isn't your lane.
I love you, Bryce.
But I know that there's one experience, and I don't know why. It's kind of like the getting in the gym deal, where it's like, I don't want to get in the gym because I don't want to get too buff right now. You know what I'm saying? It's like, well, first let's get in the gym, buddy. But I remember like when I was contemplating certain things, it's like, man, but what if I become a world traveler and I end up in Dublin, Ireland, and somebody hands me a brew, and it's disrespectful to their culture if I don't take it, like just the way the mind works. But now it's like, well, there's a potential that I'll be able to toast. I'll be able to toast, and I won't disrespect the culture, and I'll be able to have like that experience. And so, the choice is
totally.
yours.
I mean, when I first started on this recovery journey, actually, I was working at another different brewery that was piloting a non-alcoholic beer, and they had tons of like unlabeled samples, and I was taking cases at a time home. There was actually recently like the Hard Times, the parody like news website was like, friend who recently got sober pounding non-alcoholic beers with a like strikingly familiar gusto. Like that was me in early sobriety. Like I was knocking them back. But I mean, the goal for me was to stay sober, to not get drunk, and to not like repeat that cycle of self-medication. And, that was the thing that helped me do that. And certainly I have slowed down considerably in terms of, the amount of non-alcoholic beer that I'm consuming. But it's remained a part of my a part of my journey, because like now I'm just fascinated with the category itself and like all these different flavors and varieties out there, which is, a pretty cool thing. But yeah, like definitely like, know yourself, and I mean, do what you need to do to protect yourself.
Yeah. And it's such a spectrum of experience to be had. And I think that's the wild, wonderful world of like choice and intention. And if that seems cumbersome to you or big to you, let's just start where you at. Just start where you are. But know that wherever you are, like that there's a potential that can blossom into whatever you need whenever you need that. And I think that's a beautiful notion.
Yeah. And you're not alone. Someone else is having that similar experience that you can reach out to. And that is so cool.
And I think something that's super cool too about like NA Beverages is it almost ties, because another experience I had at this event that I went to was, I'm just talking to people, and at recovery events, more than likely people are identifying with recovery. So like when you're talking, there's already that commonality of like recovery. But in this arena, I had that moment where I'm talking to people and they're not necessarily identifying with being in recovery, and they actually still drink like regular beverages, like the alcoholic beverages, but they're here for the community and to taste the beverages that are here. And so now there's a cross-pollination between communities, and maybe one community might affect the other, where it's like, okay, you have so many conversations with people who don't drink and choose to live an alcohol-free life that you begin to consider how you move, or maybe that plays a role into your understanding of human beings in a whole. And so now you're blossoming out from just the specific recovery community in the niche of that experience to like, oh, this is human connection in general, and this conversation could take place between multiple communities. And you can learn why these people are here drinking non-alcoholic beverages, but still drink alcoholic beverages. So now, like, you can learn maybe more about the craft of this thing. And so that leads to more connection. And ultimately, the more we can connect and the more humans we can hold hands with, I think the more we can combat that thing that leads us to like drinking or using problematically in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you get out there, like the more you find these connections. I mean, if you're willing to be vulnerable and network like in these communities, like I found in the non-alc bev community specifically, I mean, there are tons of people in recovery. There's certainly plenty of entrepreneurs who are not in recovery, but have a vested interest in folks that are. But the cool thing is that, they're, as opposed to, having come from the alcoholic beverage community, like there's this camaraderie in the non-alc community that just didn't exist. Like certainly there's a lot of competitiveness, but like everyone wants to see it grow. Cause I mean, a lot of us just want to have more of these products available for ourselves selfishly. You know what I mean? Like I remember I had a conversation with the founder of Wellbeing Brewing, Jeff Stevens. He was saying, he's been sober 25 years. And, when he first started, he was like, I think the exact words were he's drank more O'Douls than any person on the planet. But, he went to the UK and saw there were all these producers making better non-alcoholic beverage. Same thing in Germany. And he came back to the US. He's like, why isn't that here? And I think there are so many people in that community. They're like, why do we have to be treated like we're on the island of misfit toys? Like, you go to a restaurant or a bar and it's like that one dusty O'Doul's in the back of the fridge, or like a mocktail that's just, orange juice and cranberry juice mixed together. It's like, no, I mean, there are folks out there who want to elevate experience for everyone, because what hospitality is about, and like also sharing experience with friends. Like if you're going to a Thanksgiving dinner or something along those lines, like, you shouldn't be an afterthought. Like you should be, Bryce, what you were saying, like be able to toast people if you so choose to be a part of that. But yeah, I mean, if you're passionate about something, put yourself out there. You're going to find your people, especially sober people.
Yeah. Great words spoken. I think that is a good way to kind of wrap the conversation up. We want to respect your time, Mark. We really appreciate you coming on and sharing your personal story, but also your perspective from somebody who's worked in the industry and been on both sides of personal experience within the hospitality industry, as well as somebody who cares about craft beverages and partakes in non-alcoholic beverages yourself. I think your perspective is very important in this conversation. I feel that we're just on the cusp, like it's really starting to pick up steam. And I think we're going to be having this conversation within American culture more and more as we continue to press forward. Man, I'll tell you, how giddy I get when I see NA beverages on the menu. I'm like, I don't have to, because you go to karaoke or something like that. I'll be like, yeah, run me a Shirley Temple. You know what I'm saying? And I'll drink. I don't care. I really don't care, But now to see that I'm being included, it's like, okay, I could get the ginger Manhattan or whatever the hell they got on the menu. And it's like, let me try something different. I like it. My wallet doesn't like it, but I'm with it. We're being a part of the conversation. It makes for a more immersive experience for me. And I'm excited to see how it continues to blossom.
Yeah, I'm still spending about maybe 5% as much as I was when I was drinking the fully leaded stuff. So I think we're in good shape, Bryce. But thank y'all so much for having me. It was such a pleasure being here and being able to chat with y'all, and for all the work you're doing out there.
Thank you. Definitely likewise. And before we wrap up, Mark, I know that you are, like you said, writing, and it's part of your recovery, but it's also a gift to the world. So where can folks read the words that you're putting out there?
Yeah, I'm writing primarily for Good Beer Hunting. So yeah, I think I'm the only sober person that's regularly on this beer publication. Awesome. It's yep. And you can find me on Twitter at Mark with a K, LAFARO. Definitely be publishing a lot more stuff in the future, especially around the non-alc bev world.
Amazing.
And we'll put all those links in the description of this podcast.
Yes, we shall.
And thank you all for listening. It's been a wonderful conversation, and we'll catch you next time on the Rise, Recover, Live podcast.
So now you're excited. Bryce, Liz, how do I get involved with the Phoenix? Well, my friend, it is super simple. We actually have an app. Head over to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or look in the show notes of this podcast, wherever you're listening to or watching this podcast, and go download the Phoenix app.
The Phoenix app makes it so easy to find classes that are near you or to access our virtual class schedule where you can hop on from the comfort of your home. You can also join our groups and have a conversation with someone from the Phoenix community from anywhere in the world. Please make sure that you join the podcast group where you can connect with Bryce and I and other listeners. Everything that you need is in the show notes. You can also head to our website at www.thephoenix.org. And maybe while you're there, you click the volunteer tab and get even more involved.